Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy T for 365 Horror, and this is a horror movie discovery channel. I am just here to put as many horror movies on your watch list as possible. And in today's video, we are going to be looking at 4 killer alien movies for you guys to watch and stream today. So let's get into it right now. Now we are going to get into the video, but before we do, I've got to remind you guys to please like and subscribe if you like this content. Also, this video is best watched with a movie tracker. I like to use Letterboxd. It's just the easiest way to keep track of the movies that you've seen and want to see. Now today we're going to try out something a little bit different. Today we're going to try out something a little bit different. I've heard from so many people so far that Alien Romulus is critically acclaimed. People love the movie so far, and I'm glad about that because I do love the Alien franchise. But for me, I am more of a streamer. I do get out to the theaters here and again, but I will just wait for a movie to stream, especially nowadays, right? Because you really aren't waiting months or years like back in the day. So it's really only a matter of a month or two. So it is kind of painful. So I decided to do this FOMO series that I've been thinking about doing for a while. So what we're going to do is every time a theatrical release comes out, I don't know if you're going to be part of the horror stream team or whatever, home stream team or whatever. I know probably a lot of people don't really make it out to the theaters as much. So as being with part of that, I've decided to shadow the bigger releases and kind of release a video of movies that we can watch while we wait for some of these bigger movies to come out. So in today's video, I've come up with a couple of criteria, and as I went on, I found out that this criteria is hard, but it was my first one. So I got the idea for this one right before Maxine came out, and I did try to put together a video of that, but I found out that you actually do need a little bit of time because I'm not just going to look up the movies and just tell you what it says. Like, I want to actually watch the movie, make sure that I'm still enjoyed by it, especially some of the older school ones, because in today's video there are a couple of older school ones. So I did want to make sure that those movies are still good and still enjoyable. So yeah, when I kind of saw Maxine was coming out, I decided I was going to try to do a TNA. Like, I like to try to, what I want to try to do is I want to try to combine a couple of genres and really hone in on what the essence of these movies are for our watch list, like while we're waiting. So for Maxine, for an example, the two things that come to mind for me, and I know there's a whole bunch of them, but hey, we just go with what we want. You could go with strong female lead, you could go with a ton of stuff, but for that one, I kind of was looking at TNA and slasher, right? Because it is XXX, it's XXX actress, you know, so I thought that those two things would really embody it well. So for this one, my two criteria are going to be, it has to be on a spaceship, because if you look at the original Aliens and this new one, they're both, I believe they're both spaceship based. So I did want to have these ones on a spaceship, and I did, and it has to be a killer alien. So that doesn't, it can't be a parasite, it can't be anything else, it has to be an alien. And even with those criteria, it was actually quite hard to find. Like, I had a way easier time finding TNA slashers. I just didn't have enough time to watch enough good ones to actually bring you guys a list. So it's actually hard to find these alien movies that are on a spaceship only. So you'd be surprised, a lot of them take place on a planet or on Earth or on some other type of vehicle, not really a spaceship. So that was constricting, and I could only really find a couple of movies. So that's one thing in the comments. If you know of a spaceship horror that I missed, please leave it in the comments. But there is one thing that I definitely came to the conclusion of, and that is there are not enough space horror movies, especially today. Like, we've really been lacking in this, in the horror sci-fi genre. Like, once I started looking for these, like, even some of the movies that I had to really reach back to are from the late 90s. Like, we just don't do that anymore. Like, everything is kind of this bleak, you know, different setting. You don't get too many sci-fi stuff. So I don't know, bring back the sci-fi, man. When I was watching this, now I might actually go back and watch some more just sci-fi horror, because on my search, I found what looked to be some like really, really good movies, but they didn't fit the theme. So I just added them to my list and I was like, yeah, I missed some sci-fi horror. So that was a bit of a challenge when making this. And one more little thing that I wanted to touch on before we get right into the movies, and that is a little bit more of a meta conversation. So while I was doing the searching for these movies, which, I was in a lot of forums and, because there's tons of sci-fi horror, but On a Ship and Aliens is just a hard mix. And one of the comments that I had seen on one of the forums, and I can't remember which, so please, I'm not trying to steal an idea or anything, but it really did get me thinking, and that is are these alien spaceship movies essentially, in the broader term, are these horror or are these haunted house movies? Like, I just thought of that as kind of an interesting kind of theme. Like, you really can't escape. It's events that are happening in a very enclosed area. And even though in this case, it would be aliens, that really doesn't differ from a ghost. Like, I guess if you go with haunted house or haunting to be ghost only, which it does have a few definitions. I did look it up. It could mean a people or an animal that frequents a place or whatever. So it was interesting because even though it's a monster, it still kind of pops in and out of the scenes. It still causes havoc, scares people, kills people. It's just the difference between being a ghost or not. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of an interesting theme, and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. Do you think spaceship horror movies like this, would you consider it a haunted house movie in the grand scheme of things? I don't know. That was just an interesting concept. But enough rambling from me. Let's get right into some of these movies. So the first movie we're going to take a look at on this list is a 2017 horror sci-fi thriller, a movie by the name of Life, and you can check this one out on Netflix and VOD Digital.
This nation will continue to be a pioneer.
So Life is a movie that follows a team of astronauts that are on the International Space Station, and they kind of encounter the first alien life on Mars. Now, as they study the alien life form that they name Calvin, they quickly come to learn that this organism is highly intelligent and very deadly. As Calvin grows more powerful, the astronauts realize that they have to find a way to destroy it and stop it from reaching Earth and causing catastrophic harm. This movie was directed by Daniel Espinosa, and it really does have a good cast to it. 3 of the standouts, or at least that stood out to me, everybody has their kind of favorite actors, but in this one you got Jake Gyllenhaal, you got Rebecca Ferguson, and you got Ryan Reynolds. Now, Life is known for its intense, suspenseful atmosphere, and it's got some pretty good production values, which gives it some pretty good effects that only add to the tension and fear. Now, this film has been compared to other space thrillers like Alien and Gravity, mostly for showing space which is just unknown. Now, when this film was released, it received mixed to positive reviews from the critics. It was mainly praised for its suspenseful atmosphere, its good visual effects, and strong performances from the cast. Although some did criticize it for some of its more usual tropes and just some more predictable elements of the genre. Now, my personal thoughts on the movie is that Life is a good movie with a great cast. Now, even though it's not exactly creepy or scary from a paranormal or supernatural sense, we still got tons of tension amid some effective jump scares. Now, not only are there lots of situations with the alien that are tense, but it also really does a good job of ramping up the tension in this hostile space environment, making it somewhat a survival movie. I like that the alien looked good, and the cinematography in movie was just shot well, and everything about space looked pretty real. Now, even though the story is a little bit cliche, I did find that it was executed well, and we did get some good, impactful self-sacrifice. Mix that with a good dark ending, and you definitely have a sci-fi horror that's worth the watch.
We're looking at the first proof of life beyond Earth.
You finally a daddy? It's gonna be a big custody battle over this one.
It's beautiful.
Next, we're going to take a look at a 2009 action horror mystery film called Pandorum, and you can check this one out on Amazon Prime and VOD Digital. Now, Pandorum is a movie that takes place on a massive spaceship named the Elysium, and its crew are traveling the distant space looking for planets and habitable worlds. Now, the story begins with two astronauts waking up out of hypersleep, and they find the ship in disarray and most of the crew are missing or dead. Once they start to really explore the vessel, they quickly come to find out that they are not alone. Now, shit really hits the fan when the crew finds out that the ship is inhabited by these like ginormous mutated alien creatures. And also they come to find out that they're being affected by a psychological disorder named Pandorum, which brings about hallucinations and paranoia. Now, this movie is directed by Christian Alvart, and some of the standout cast to me were Ben Foster and Dennis Quaid. Now, Pandorum does a good job of exploring themes of psychological trauma, but also kind of delves into ideas of the fear of the unknown, and also humans trying to survive against insurmountable odds. It does a good job of combining these elements of psychological horror with sci-fi, and just does a really good job of ramping up the tension and claustrophobia. Now, when Pandorum was released, it got mixed reviews from the critics. Now, while some critics did appreciate its suspenseful plot and good acting from the cast, many just thought that the story lacked originality in its execution and just didn't bring anything new to the space horror genre. Nonetheless, the movie's been successful in creating more of a cult following of sci-fi horror fans who just like its unique take on the genre. Now, my personal thought was that Pandorum was a pretty decent sci-fi horror flick. Even though you didn't get traditional creeps and scares, you still got some good tension and a couple good jump scares. Now, I did enjoy the initial mystery that the story kind of built up with the ship, and it kept me intrigued enough to really stick around and see what happened to the vessel. I also thought it had a pretty decent cast, which includes Ben Foster and Dennis Quaid, who in my opinion both put on solid performances. Unfortunately, over the course of the movie, they do end up throwing in a lot of extra characters, and I did feel like these characters were just thrown in. And I felt that their motivations and a lot of their dialogue kind of showed that. Again, another good element of this movie was the story, which I thought the plot had some really good twists and turns, some which you saw coming and some which you did not. There's nothing exactly deep about this one, but it is just a good action horror that's worth the watch.
They didn't see me human. They're fast. They're stronger than you know. If they come after you, run. If you run and you don't look back. Help me!
So now this is a video about Alien Romulus, so I don't feel like it would be right if I didn't really point you to other movies in the franchise. So the first movie we're just going to take a very brief look at is the 1979 horror sci-fi movie, Alien. And you can watch this one on Disney+, Stars, Crave, and VOD Digital. Now, the first movie was directed by Ridley Scott, and of course you had a very young Sigourney Weaver in this one. And I'm not going to go over it too much because I'm going to actually point to a different movie in the franchise, because while I know that this movie is a straight classic and still is a classic today, I just don't know. 79 is pretty old, and the movie shows it. Like I said, I do make sure to watch these movies before I suggest them. And I haven't really watched this movie in maybe 10 or 15 years. And in that time, it has just become a little bit dated, unfortunately. And so I can't fully suggest it. Now, I do suggest you watch it because it is a classic. It's worth the watch. You should watch it. It's an essential piece of horror cinema. But I could see younger audiences, just with the tech and some of the situations and just how the movie's executed, it does feel very old school. Now, I will say this, if you are going to watch it, make sure when I just watched it recently, I actually watched the 4K remastered version. And aside from some of the visual style, the acting and performances were so good that I didn't fully feel like I was watching an old school movie. Yeah, some of the lingo is a little bit old school. The sound effects and some of that are definitely old school. The computers and visuals are old school, but the acting didn't throw me off as like overly hokey and campy, especially for a movie of that old time period. So instead, I am going to keep it just a little bit newer, just a little bit. It's still kind of old school, but I'm going to point to the 1997 action horror sci-fi Aliens Resurrection. And again, you can check this one out on Disney Plus and VOD Digital. Now, Alien Resurrection is the 4th installment in the Alien franchise. This film is actually set 200 years in the future after Part 3, and Sigourney Weaver was killed in Part 3, but she's been resurrected through a cloning technology. Now, the main aim of the project in this one is actually to extract a xenomorph clone from Sigourney Weaver, but it results in giving her almost like alien and human mixed traits. This movie is directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, and honestly, this movie has such a star-studded cast. I'm just going to name a couple of the standouts to me. Of course, you've got Sigourney Weaver, you've got Winona Ryder, you've got Ron Perlman, you've got the brother from CSI Miami that's now a crackhead. I don't know if he's actually a crackhead, but I've seen some latest, the brother was good looking, and now, whoa, like I don't know if he's changed, maybe he's coming back, but you definitely get a young version of him, so if you think he's hot, boom, he's in it. And this film basically explores themes of humanity versus monstrosity, the consequences of Ripley's cloning, and also the moral implications of genetic modification. Now, in the movie, Ripley struggles with her new identity, and the idea that she's like this alien-human mix is a really integral part of the story. This film also explores the nature of the alien species and their evolution. Now, critically, when Alien Resurrection was released, it kind of came out to mixed to positive reviews. While some critics really applauded this bold new stylistic direction, a lot of critics also found that it just didn't live up to the hype of the franchise. Sigourney Weaver's performance as a cloned Ripley was really good and brought a new depth to the character, even though the movie only was received with mixed reviews. Now, my thoughts on it are Alien is a decent to good blockbuster horror movie that still actually kind of holds up today. When it comes to the creeps and scares, you don't really get the ones that you get from the movies nowadays, but you did get some good action horror tension, even though some of the scenes ended up turning out to be kind of 90s action, Vin Diesel, XXX type, be underwater for 10 minutes and you're just wondering how they do it, so it did kind of come off a little hokey. Now, when it came to the gore in this movie, you really did get a lot of drippy, gross, gooey aliens, and you got a lot of good gory kills to go along with them. Even upon a rewatch of this movie, just some of the brutality of the aliens in this one and just brains being exposed, I really was surprised because I didn't remember it having as much gore as it did. Now, when it came to the characters, of course, the acting in Alien Resurrection does not disappoint. While watching this movie, you'll see plenty of actors and actresses that you just barely recognize, even small ones. One of my standouts is, one of my favorite movies is Seven, and I didn't actually realize until this recent rewatch that you actually had one of the characters from Seven. You remember the one in the gimp suit who had the blade on the, you know what I mean? And he's like, I after. Yeah, I didn't realize that guy was actually in the movie. And he even kind of stays in character and does what probably became his like kind of shifty trademark performance. I also really enjoyed the fact that Ron Perlman, he was really good in this movie, and I actually found that he had some great one-liners that still were chuckle-worthy to this day. Now, although they did take kind of a bolder turn with some of the concepts in the story, and I'm not going to tell you a couple of the scenes I'm talking about, I'm not going to spoil them, but I really did like the story. And even though at times I thought like it felt like more of the same, like I said, there was a couple concepts in it that did make it feel different. All in all, when I'm thinking about this movie, this is a great lead up to Alien Romulus, and it's a really good action horror watch if you just want to see some bullets, blood, guts, and aliens.
Who are you?
Ripley Ellen, Lieutenant First Class, number 36706.
Ellen Ripley died 200 years ago. You're a thing, a construct. They grew you in a lab.
What the hell is going on here?
He is breeding an alien species.
Wish you could understand what we're trying to do here.
Now they brought it out of you.
Not all the way.
All right, the last movie we're going to look at in this lead up to Alien Romulus is actually going to be the controversial pick, and I do want to hear from you guys if you think I'm way off base. maybe this one was a reach. Okay, like sometimes, man, sometimes even I gotta reach, and this is definitely a reach because I thought there was more aliens running around on ships. Like, we're talking about a spaceship and aliens, and it was hard to find. Now, you can find plenty of thrillers, but I'm talking about like bona fide horror movies. So this last one, tell me if this one's a reach, and that is the 1997 horror sci-fi thriller movie Event Horizon. And you can check this movie out on VOD Digital.
God help us.
Now, Event Horizon is a horror sci-fi film that is actually set in the movie 2047. The story follows a crew who's investigating the disappearance of a ship called the Event Horizon. And the mystery is that the ship vanished 7 years ago on its maiden voyage. Now, the important part of the ship is that the ship was designed to travel faster than the speed of light, using a gravity drive that could open up wormholes for instantaneous travel. Now, the movie is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, and in the cast, you got Lawrence Fishburne, you got Sam Neill, you got Kathleen Quinlan, you got Jolie Richardson. It's just a great star-studded cast, so you know it's going to be acted well. Now, Event Horizon does a good job of exploring themes of cosmic horror, the limits of human understanding, and the fragility of sanity. The movie does a great job of combining elements of sci-fi and horror to create a really chilling atmosphere, and does a good job of examining the concept of humans coming into contact with an incomprehensible force beyond the boundaries of human experience. Now, upon its release, critics weren't exactly the nicest to Event Horizon. Some applauded this blend of kind of horror with sci-fi, but some also found the characters lacking. Despite its mixed critical reception, the movie has gone on to grow this almost cult following over the years. It's often appreciated for its ambitious and disturbing approach, and it's become a notable entry in the genre of sci-fi horror. Now, Event Horizon is a decent to good sci-fi horror. It does a really good job over the course of the movie, just giving you this real sense of dread and this palpable, eerie tension. Now, I really like the design of the ship, and when you got some glimpses of exactly the dimension it's been in, they're both imaginative and terrifying. I really thought that the movie had a good cast and was performed well, and part of the controversy is that when the ship does come back, it has like a certain sentience to it. Using this warp drive, it's kind of grabbed something in its travels. And I don't know if we want to call that an alien. I don't know if it was an AI. Like, it wasn't really the ship, or it was the ship. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments if you thought this one really kind of fit the alien criteria, or if I'm just like Stretch Armstrong. All in all, this is a movie that is near and dear to my heart. And when I rewatched it, it was still pretty good. Again, it's some of these movies that I haven't watched in like 10 years. They are starting to slowly get dated, which is sad, but I still think that this is a great historical watch. It explores great themes of paranoia, hallucination, and it's just overall eerie, and it's definitely worth the watch on this list.
Event Horizon was the culmination of a secret government project to create a spacecraft capable of faster-than-light flight. The ship doesn't really go faster than light. What it does is it creates a dimensional gateway that allows it to jump instantaneously from one point of the universe to another light years away.
Where's she been for the last 7 years, Doctor?
That's what we're here to find out.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for this FOMO video featuring Alien Romulus. I hope you found a couple good movies to add to your list and watch while we wait for Romulus to stream, which will feel like forever. If I had to make a pick out of one of these movies to really stand out and watch first, that would probably be Life. I just thought it had a good cast, good effects. You know, it's a little bit newer of a movie, so you get just a newer feel, and it really does have a good twisty, turny plot, and I'm sure you'll love the conclusion. Well, guys, that's really it for me. I've got to get out of here as I have got a ton of movies to watch. I hope you guys have been well and you're taking care of yourselves, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.
I thought you were dead.
Yeah, I get that a lot.